So my topic today is fear, our enemy, or love and faith, our friend. And to start, I'd like to give a really appropriate quote from a very powerful teacher, Jesus, in Matthew chapter 6, verses 22 to 25. And he said, "Clearly the light of the body is the eye, and therefore if thy eye be single, thy whole body shall be filled with light. But if thy eye be evil, thy whole body shall be filled with darkness. And therefore, if therefore the light that is in thee be darkness, how great thou darkness." And he said, be clear on this, no man can serve two masters, for either he will hate one and love the other, or else he will hold to one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon. And so what Jesus is here saying is we have to have our focus and our intention on the right spot in life. If we're focused in on God, the spiritual aspect of our being, then that brings the light of the truth for us of what it is that we need to do and how we need to go about doing, regardless of the circumstance and situation we're in. This is just a buff up to let us practice this once this is all over. However, mammon represents the physical. So if we're going to enter into our life as it is now and will be, focused in on being upset and allowing the conditions and circumstances and events to control our inner house and control our life, then we've got a problem. We can't go one way and the other. You can't do them both. I know when we first started coming into the awareness of spirituality, we did do both. And do you remember that? How horrible it was until we got over to this side? Now, the challenge is just keeping to come back to this. And it's a choice. You know, we need to be aware. We need to comply. We need to support. We need to take into consideration ourselves and everybody else. However, in that, our job is not to do it with fear, because fear is our enemy. What we want to do is work with love and faith. That's our friend, because that's what's going to see us through this and any experiences of our life. So last week, I had the pleasure of listening to Reverend Pat Campbell, and she came up with an acronym for fear that I had not heard before. And I really want to talk about that because it's so relevant. It's face everything and rise. We have no control over the situations and the circumstances that we're in, these trying times right now, new to all of us. No one escapes it. But we could choose how we're going to respond. So if we face it, everything that it is, and rise, then what we do is we rise like the phoenix from the ashes. Greek mythology, Egyptian mythology, all of it talks about the ending and the purification in the fire, and that's done by the phoenix itself, and out of that's born the new phoenix, which rises for another 500 years of good luck. But that is a physical representation. The fire is the cleansing of the spirit. And that's what we need to do. Cleanse our spirit of fear and embrace love and faith. And you've heard this talk before, and I'm going to talk about it again. We need to learn to walk in the eye of the storm. I am calm, I am centered, I am peaceful, I am poised at all times and in all situations. That is where we need to stand, because, hey folks, this is like being on the ocean and they're right in the storm. And it's not gee, if we come across a storm. Everywhere we go, our life is in the storm. So it is up to us to determine who and what we're going to take there. I want to enter it with power, with strength, with faith, and doing what I need to do to assist and fulfill my obligations to everyone and to guide and support people who need what I have to offer wherever. And I can do that in my living room. Actually, in my office. I can do that anywhere, but if I want to make a positive contribution, I have to be in the eye of the storm. Because if I step into the tumultuous part of it and get involved in that, then I become ineffective, I become inefficient, and then I become part of the problem, not part of the solution. That's what we get to choose. That's what Jesus was talking about. Do we want to be part of the problem, or do we want to be part of the solution? That is purely and simply our choice. And it isn't easy just to say that. It's practicing it. And I always use the fishing rod method. Fishing in the Bow River when I was a kid growing up and a young man, lots of times if I didn't pay attention, my line went down the water. And I had to reel it in to get it back where the fish were, and where I had a margin of control in my experience. My mind, your mind, all our minds is the same thing. What we have to do is we have to reel it in when it goes off center, when it goes off track, when it gets out of the eye of the storm. Dr. Ernest Holmes did one of the most favorite quotes I've used all my life since I come across it early in 1981. He says, stay with the one and never deviate it. Never leave it for a moment. Nothing else can equal this attitude. To desert the truth in the hour of need is to prove that we do not know the truth. When things look the worst, that is the supreme moment to demonstrate to ourselves that there are no obstructions to the operation of truth. When things look the worst is the best time to work, the most satisfying. The person who can throw himself with a complete abandon into that limitless sea of receptivity, having cut loose from all apparent moorings, is the one who will always receive the greatest rewards. So we need to stand in our truth in this eye of the storm. And, time to park the faith in God. Time to park it. Let's make that next step. As Jesus said, walk with the faith of God, where there is absolutely no contradiction to our belief that can be entertained and accepted in our consciousness. We stand in that light, and we walk in that light, and we walk as though it's so, and we believe it's so, it's so, and we do it as though it's so. And we stand in that truth. Dr. Holmes said, faith is the power of prayer. It is a mental attitude against which there are no longer any contradiction in the mind that entertains it. Faith is a mental attitude which is so convinced of its own idea, which so completely accepts it, that any contradiction is unthinkable and impossible. So we have to deny the false stuff. That doesn't mean I don't look at the news and understand what's going on and the seriousness of it. Of course. But I don't go into the awfulizing on it. I recognize it. That creates my awareness. And then I go about doing what I can do to be of service to create to the positive pool of human consciousness. Faith does not mean not trusting God Faith does not mean trusting God to stop the storm, but trusting Him to strengthen us as we walk through the storm. That's what the faith is. Okay. It's all about that trust. Now, another point here. The journey is all about our focus and intention. And so another little favorite tool of mine during these times is to look at everything. And by the way, nobody likes what's going on. So this point will really drive it home. You've heard me mention it many times, but it's time to reflect on it right now. We don't have to like or dislike what we can or can't do. That's not relevant. So quit focusing on it. What we need to do is take our mind and look at what we can do, what we can have, and what we are. And release looking at what we can't do, what we can't have, and what we're not. Because when we're there, we're not walking in faith. We're not in the eye of the storm. When we're over here, we're walking in faith, we're walking in the eye of the storm, we're doing it. That doesn't mean that it's the ideal. It doesn't mean that that's where we want to be. It doesn't mean that we have to like it. That's just what we can do and can have. So we need to latch on to that and be grateful for that and work with that. Timber Hawkeye, a Buddhist boot camp, said, you can't calm the storm, so stop trying. What you can do is calm yourself. L.R. Noe said, do not be dismayed by the brokenness of the world. All things break. All things can be mended. Not with time, as they say, but with intention. So go lovingly, love intentionally, extravagantly, unconditionally. The broken world awaits in darkness for the light that is you. And so the last thing I want to talk about here today is our greatest enemy. Our greatest enemy is not the virus, folks. It's the lack of respect. We have been getting monumental examples of people adapting and changing and respecting each and every one of us, but there are a percentage of our population that don't think it's a big deal and don't care. And it's up to us, as we go and stand in the light, if we come in contact with those people, it's up to us to share how we feel. I'm not going to take it anymore. I was at Starbucks. I go, it's at Safeways, okay? And it's the only one open, and my buddy has nowhere else to go. So him and I go seniors hour at Safeways. And we go in and get a few groceries with the seniors, and the Starbucks is open. Oh, man. I got to tell you, it's like heaven. We found the oasis in all of the storm. And so we get our coffee and paper, and then we head on back to the ranch. Well, sir, I was there, and we're usually the first ones in the door. We get there early, sit there, talk. I'm in there, and I'm up getting my coffee, and I feel this heavy breathing on my neck. I turn around, there's somebody right there, like that. And there's spots there for the social distancing and everything. Okay, now you know I do get excited sometimes. And I was talking with my aunt about it. She said, well, what did you do? I said, I moved over here and I looked at him and I said, haven't you heard of social distancing? That's back 6 feet. Now, the guy was not a senior. He was about 35 to 40 years old. He shouldn't have been there. Well, I had a whole line. And I'm just getting excited, as you well know. So I stepped to the other side to get my coffee, and I turned to him, and I said, you know, it might not matter to you, because it's old people like me that are dying mostly, not people like you. So take that and consider it. And then my aunt said, well, you should have said this or that. I said, no, Auntie, you know, I was right there. I was right there. I know myself. And I know when I need to make a point and be firm, and I know when to close it off. Oh yes, there was a lot more that could be said. And it was there, but I closed it off because nothing more needed to be said. The person never said a word, just complied. And not only did they wait for me to get my coffee, they waited for me to get out of the store before they went up. Because I turned around, he was still there as I was walking out the door, then he went up to there and got his coffee. So we need to establish healthy boundaries and limits. And then I got put in place this morning myself. I didn't know I was doing something wrong. I was in there getting a head of lettuce, and there was a box that I picked up the box to look in, and the guy, hey, oh! I said, I didn't touch it. I wasn't going to get anything. He said, you touched the box. Woo! I never thought about that, but that's part of what they're doing. And I can't be upset with him because he's right. So we all need to be a little bit more patient. We need to have that respect. And like Gandhi, it's called passive resistance, you know. We need to do our social distancing. And I got to tell you, everybody that's here, especially the big dogs, corporates and that, they better watch what they're doing, because there's this new thing called media, social media, and a new thing called social shaming. Like the landlord that raised the rents in the condo complex in Seton, boy, for the 1st of April. So there's all kinds of this stuff. But our job here is to do that in a way where we stay centered, establish, maintain healthy boundaries and limits, and to know that not all storms come to disrupt your life. Some storms come to clear your path. And the last thing is always to look for the gift and rise like the phoenix. I've seen so many gifts from this, but the big gifts come later after it's all done and over, and we see it. So I know for you, as I know for myself, that fear, yes, it's there. We acknowledge it, but we do not give it a place to live. We do not rent space in our being for it. We turn from that to the truth of love and faith in the experience of God, that wherever we go and whatever we do, that divine right action takes place, and there's a gradual, orderly, sequential unfoldment into form of the highest and best that we are. And with that, I give loving thanks. I know it to be so, and so it is. Thank you.